The world is made of physical stuff, and it follows discoverable natural laws. Consciousness, life, meaning, and complexity all emerge from physical processes. Reliable knowledge comes from empirical investigation. Science doesn't answer every question, but it's the only method that consistently turns confusion into understanding. This is the physicalist position, and there is a general opinion that this position is the most level-headed and reasonable metaphysical position that we have available to us, a worldview based only on evidence and physical facts. But the reason for this is that we take for granted that experience affords us a clear idea of what the physical actually means. Does physical mean that which exists independent of experience? If it did, then we could never know it, because we cannot step outside experience to verify it. Perhaps physical just means whatever shows up in experience itself. Well, that would mean that everything we ever know, including thoughts and feelings, must count as physical in that sense, yet thoughts and feelings can't be measured by scientific instruments. Then maybe physical means objective. And what do we mean by objective? It is that which we all agree on as being real. But our agreements about a shared reality depend on our awareness of that reality. Physicalism defined in this way therefore depends on the thing that it's trying to explain away. Ultimately, when we call something physical, we are applying a conceptual label to patterns we observe in experience and measurement. No one directly sees electrons or gravitational fields as such. What we actually encounter are readings on instruments, perceptual appearances, and consistent patterns in data. The entities themselves, and matter as such, are theoretical ideas we infer from those patterns. The physical is not what is most directly present in experience, it is a way of organizing what appears into a coherent model. To say that physicalism is scientific is often to define physical as whatever best explains what we observe. And the physicalist argues that the best explanation for the consistency of our observations is an external world that causes them. We infer a physical reality because assuming it exists allows science and technology to work with incredible precision. Physicalism is, in this way, a commitment to what appears to be the simplest and most powerful explanation, that patterns in experience are produced by a mind-independent physical world. But of course, the success of a model in organizing appearances does not prove that the entities it talks about exist exactly as described. Newtonian physics worked extremely well for centuries, yet its ideas about absolute space and time were eventually rejected. A theory can make accurate predictions without giving an ultimately accurate picture of reality. Matter is not encountered in the same direct way that sights, sounds, thoughts, and feelings are. Trying to explain what is immediately certain, experience itself, by appealing to something only indirectly inferred, matter, risks reversing the order of explanation. It's like explaining the land entirely through the map. The map may represent the land with great usefulness and precision, but its usefulness does not prove that reality is exactly as the map depicts it. The same scientific data that physicalists use to support their view could, in principle, be interpreted within other philosophical frameworks, such as neutral monism, process philosophy, or phenomenology, without losing any predictive power. The difference is not in the data, but in how we interpret it. The brain, as an object, appears within experience. It is something consciousness presents to us. So to say that consciousness is produced by the brain involves an extra interpretive step. It's a bit like saying that a movie screen is created by one of the images playing on it. Perhaps that image corresponds to something important about how the movie is structured, but that does not mean that the image itself explains the screen. The entire world of matter and measurement shows up within awareness, and we cannot step outside of that to see the world in itself. When we change the brain, or when it becomes damaged, conscious experience changes with it. This is strong evidence that the mind and brain are closely connected, and that brain states play a crucial role in the structure of human experience. But even strong dependence does not by itself prove that the brain produces consciousness in an ultimate metaphysical sense. That conclusion assumes that matter is primary, which is not something the evidence alone establishes. Looking at the exact same evidence, someone could also say that changes in consciousness appear to us as changes in what we call the brain. After all, brain scans and measurements are themselves experiences happening within or to awareness. Calling one side the ultimate cause and the other the ultimate effect is therefore not simply dictated by the data. We do not directly see causation as such. We see patterns, regularities, and reliable relations. When we turn a knob and see something change, we discover a dependable relationship within experience. We learn which descriptions give us control. But this tells us how things behave, not what reality is ultimately made of. Empirical should mean what is directly given in experience before we divide it into categories. Before we split things into subject and object, mind and matter, inner and outer, there is simply the raw field of experience itself. That immediate experience should always be the starting point of empiricism. The notion that only physical or measurable things can exist can never be an empirical discovery. Physicalism is a speculative metaphysical theory like any other, a bias toward treating what can be measured, modelled, and publicly verified as what is truly real. It claims to trust only what can be shown, yet quietly draws a boundary around what it's willing to count as real in the first place. Physicalism secures its position not by direct evidence, but by defining reality as whatever fits its own model. Something lawful, measurable, objective, and publicly verifiable. Anything that cannot be described in this way is reduced or dismissed until it can be redescribed in physical terms. In that form, the theory becomes difficult to challenge on its own terms, because it can always expand the word physical to include whatever new patterns of experience it needs to absorb. Treating ideas like matter, laws, and causation as if they were independent realities, rather than concepts we form from experience, makes it easier for us to do science. This is an invaluable practical ability. And I can appreciate the argument that physicalism is our best guess, or even the least speculative theory available to us. But it only seems less speculative than alternatives if you have already assumed that law-like third-person causal explanations are the standard for veracity. The lawful nature of experience does not require a hidden world out there behind it. Lawfulness may simply be a feature of how things appear. To infer a separate physical foundation is to add an unseen second layer of reality. This is, again, to mistake a useful model of reality for reality itself. There is no decisive reason to assume that the world's intelligibility must point beyond appearance to something non-experiential. Why should we take intelligibility as evidence for something that never itself appears? The more deeply we investigate, the more structured patterns we uncover. Neuroscience, for example, has revealed things like the split brain effect that simple introspection could never discover, but this is still a discovery within experience. It is clear that we continuously fail to recognize the true extent of the structure of experience, but it is not clear that experience rests on something non-experiential. So, what's the alternative? My idea is very simple. What is real is what is actually present. The appearing is the real. The world is not a representation inside a mind, and it's not a dead mechanism outside experience entirely. It is the living display of that which is actually present. The great delusion is believing that the obvious is not enough, that reality must be elsewhere, deeper, more abstract. But the deepest layer is simply this: what is happening as it is happening. And this happening is inexhaustibly rich, self-evident, and complete in itself. Whenever we posit something beyond appearance, what we have now is a further appearance, an ideal structure, present now. The supposed beyond never shows up except as the content of what is actually present, so the distinction between appearance and what grounds appearance is itself an appearance within what is actually present. Our explanations never escape the field they explain. The lawfulness, depth, counterfactual richness, and intersubjective stability that physicalists attribute to an underlying physical world need not be treated as signs pointing beyond appearance. They may be the intrinsic character of reality as it is actually present. Nothing is missing. Reality is not hiding from us. It is simply more structurally magnificent than we seem to be able to conceive. And that is an us problem. We do not understand how just this is possible. And because we do not understand, we doubt that it really is possible. We imagine there must be something else that makes it possible. Just this is not enough. And what concerns me most is that we are dismissing what is most incredible about existing. I do not really care about all this rhetoric. I participate in it because people are more willing to listen to it. What concerns me is that we are encouraging a detachment from reality, that we are relocating the wonder we feel when looking at the stars by construing it as a secondary effect of processes presumed to be more fundamental than anything that is actually present. We rarely think long enough about how metaphysical frameworks shape the way we understand ourselves within reality. By defining ourselves as complex but ultimately impersonal mechanisms, we begin to act, think, and dream in mechanistic ways. If reality is inseparable from its own disclosure to us, then our understanding of reality participates in how reality unfolds itself. Reality cannot be separated from the manner of its appearing. If we assume limitation at the foundation, we reinforce limitation. If we assume separation, we inhabit a world of fragments. Our worldview shapes the world we are capable of encountering in principle. And this is not just a matter of belief. It concerns the deepest orientation of a life. We must be extraordinarily careful not to foreclose possibilities of understanding and being by prematurely restricting what counts as real to what fits a mechanistic model. If reality is inseparable from its mode of disclosure, and if how things are understood is inseparable from how things can appear, then that mechanistic model can and will become true for us. Not because it is ultimately true, but because we have made it true, and because we have learned to inhabit reality through it. In our desire to be sober and rational, we may inadvertently narrow the horizon of what we take to be achievable, meaningful, and conceivable, and that is a very dark and deep pit to crawl back out of. Physicalism delivers a verdict. There is a sharp limit to what is possible. To live inside that verdict is to inhabit a world where nothing can exceed the system, and so nothing can transform it at the deepest level. If we assume reality is closed, then whatever openness might have emerged through us is foreclosed in advance. But if we allow that more could be possible, to boot if we embrace and respect this possibility, this is not merely an opinion about reality, it is the way reality becomes more possible. If physicalism is wrong, then our belief in physicalism has not been neutral, it has been precisely what has built our own prison.